Just imagine having an entire week off of work, drinking a bunch of beers, laying out by a lake, just hanging out, no responsibility, nothing. And then after that incredibly long week, having to go back to actual work. Could you imagine a life where that's realistic?
I lived it. I lived the worst life.
How did you feel today after experiencing that week of heaven? Like was like the only comparison hell? Like what is that comparison?
I think the worst part about it was going to a wedding right off the vacation and never stopping at home. Non-stop wedding all weekend, straight into like a party on Sunday. Didn't even get to stop at home and not getting home till 4 o'clock. And then knowing that I had to go to work the next day, I literally almost just killed myself.
Did you get a lot of yes or no though? Did you get a lot of drinking in?
Yeah,
Are you ready to hop back on that wagon?
got to.
Let's get loaded. Because this is the Loaded Box Podcast. That was a nice
Where we,
open.
where we never finished first because we finished last.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Loaded Box Podcast as I swallow my first sip of beer. I'm Ben Morgan. That's DJ Primo. And DJ, it's good to have you back, man. Last week we had to bring in old Mikey from Goal Line Fantasy Football to talk a little sleepers and busts AFC style. But it's good to be back. I have to ask you before we get going on the NFC version. Were you satisfied with your alcohol intake last week, or did you like go up and above your expectations? Did you fall below them? Where was your intake, and were you sasatisfied with it?
I didn't really do too much day drinking, which I was really
Ooh,
disappointed in. I didn't usually drink until about 5 o'clock. Around 5. Start till after that, and I don't know. I could have drank more. That's for sure. Could have drank more.
well, we're back at it today. At least we're back for the people. You're drinking for the people. I guess we saved it for the podcast listeners of all things, right?
I'm still alive, so I can still drink.
Fair enough. As I said last week, we discussed our 2019 fantasy football sleepers and busts for the AFC with Mikey Ostrowski of Goal Line Fantasy Football. This week we are back with DJ and we're doing the same thing but for the NFC. So DJ, let's start with our sleepers first and let's hear who your first NFC sleeper is.
Well, before we get to that, I was gonna say I did listen to you and Mikey last week, and just like I thought, my little trash boy was trash. It was okay, but he's always trash. I listened to it while I was on the golf course by myself, living my best life up on vacation, drinking beer. I did drink beer on the golf course by
Yeah,
myself. I did have that going for me.
yeah,
So I did day drink.
if you're out golfing during the day by yourself, that's when you can just put down like one per hole, right? I mean,
It was, yeah, I had to drive, but yeah.
fair
All
enough.
right. So my first sleeper for this NFC version of our sleepers and bus is Philip Rivers.
All right, do you care to explain yourself?
So since I wasn't on last week's version of this, I was like, I'll just choose whoever I want. So I'm gonna fill in from both the AFC and NFC, kind of the NFC, but really mostly just the AFC. But I tried to do just. I didn't even look to see what conference they were in. I just went with the players, and I'm saying I'm doing it because I missed last week, and you guys didn't get to hear me talk about them.
And that's your explanation. And my explanation is you knew damn well what we were doing, but due to alcohol and incompetence, you ended up mixing AFC and NFC.
I mean, that's just lies. You're just lying. I don't know what to say after
Yeah,
that.
I'm lying. That's why you're a loss for words. Thanks for proving my point.
You're just
All right.
lying. I mean, there's nothing else to say. A defensive person's lying. You lied. Period.
All right, Alki. Let's hear about this Philip Rivers of the NFC.
All right, so Philip Rivers I saw you didn't do this, but I'm going quarterback, running back, wide receiver because I just wanted to do that and it sounded cool to me.
Does
So I'm
sound
going
cool.
with that route. So, you're fucking blurry today. Or
Been
I'm still
drinking.
drunk. I have him, so his ADP is 8.07. That puts him at quarterback 10. I actually have him ranked at QB 5. Here's why. Okay, I'm not going to go into numbers with guys, lots of these fucking nerds out there will be like, he had this many carries weeks 12 through 16, and he did this much target share. It's like, fuck off, dude. Like, everything changes throughout the season. You can't predict a whole next season off of 4 fucking games. Like, get out of here with this. So I use my eyes because I'm not a nerd.
I'm gonna catch you slipping later in this podcast, and I'm gonna call you out.
I'll have a couple numbers, but nothing like stupid like that. It's just like, yeah, because I said ADP 8.07, that's a number, but not like your statistical dumb shit that people really get into. He has so many weapons around him and a defense that will get the ball back in his hands. He's got Mike Williams. He's got Hunter Henry. He's got Keenan Allen. He's got Melvin Gordon. He's got Austin Eckler. He has no shortage of weapons, of guys he can get the ball to. It's ridiculous. He gets the ball to Melvin Gordon 5 yards out of the backfield. He can take it to the house at any point. You know what I'm saying? So many weapons that he can throw it to. Guys getting drafted above Phillip Rivers right now, which I think are crazy, are Deshaun Watson, who I'll talk about, Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield, and Carson Wentz. I just think those are guys that he has a higher floor than. And when it comes to quarterback, it's really about consistency, especially in fantasy football. He has a higher floor, and I think about the exact same ceiling as these guys, especially a Matt Ryan and a Carson Wentz. Like, I could see why people would take a chance on a Baker Mayfield with Odell being added and things like that. And even Deshaun Watson, even though I hate Deshaun Watson, I can understand people's like arguments for that. Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz, I personally don't think should ever go above him. Watson, Baker Mayfield, I wouldn't take him above him, but I can understand the argument. I just think he's going way too low for how much weapons and how consistent he is as a quarterback.
You and I have a very similar strategy when it comes to selecting our quarterbacks in fantasy football. Doesn't it feel like Phillip Rivers has been our guy for the greater part of like 5+ years now? That guy that just gets it done. Like you said, he's a consistent guy. Even if the Chargers have a bad game, he seems to get it done statistically. So it's like, why are you spending this high round draft pick on a quarterback when a guy like Phillip Rivers can be there in the 8th or 9th round? But he has just been that guy.
I don't understand that. That's what I'm saying. Like, Watson's going, and I don't even want to say it, but they're just those two guys, Mayfield and Watson, are just going so high when I think a guy who's going to outscore them is going in round 8. And that's still, that's when I start looking at quarterbacks,
Doesn't it? At some point, so we've talked about this with Tom Brady a bunch in the past, but at some point these quarterbacks are a little bit older, they're consistent year in and year out. At some point they have to have that breaking point and they're going to slow down. Any worry that, oh shoot, Phillip Rivers maybe in that year where that starts to happen? Or if you draft a guy like Phillip Rivers, do you come back 2 or 3 rounds later and just draft another guy just to solidify the position?
I mean, that might be the strategy, but I don't see anything. He's too fiery. He's too competitive. Like, some guys, obviously everybody's competitive, but you see his competitiveness. I don't see him slowing down. Still throws the ball the same. The arm doesn't look to be falling off. There's no reason to jump off of Phillip Rivers anytime soon here.
Yeah, I like it. I'm all about Phillip Rivers. We all know that. My first sleeper here, one of your guys. I'm excited to hear what you have to say about him because the Packers wide receiver core is just kind of a jumbled mess right now, it sounds like, after Davante Adams. But my first sleeper that we're going to talk about from the NFC, because he actually plays for the Packers. The Packers are in the NFC. I follow the rules. Geronimo Allison, ADP of the 11th pick in the 8th round. We know Aaron Rodgers. We know that he's healthy. We know he's going to be back. And we know that he's going to make someone on that team that catches passes outside of Davante Adams fantasy relevant. And I really like Allison here. There's been talk between like, who's that number 2 option going to be? Is it going to be Allison? Is it going to be Valdez-Scantling? Well, from what I'm hearing, and you can pipe in on this for sure, but it sounds like Valdez-Scantling might be the other opposite, like outside wide receiver, and Allison works from the slot. And honestly, for how many 3 wide receiver sets the Packers are going to use, I don't care. That's fine. And you might end up getting a better matchup from the slot. So, yeah, you're going to get Geronimo Allison tail end of the 8th or the 9th round. I love it. I think he has the experience over all those other Packers wide receivers. They're all like second-year guys. I think, and I don't think this is too crazy, I think Allison, if he can stay healthy, I think he can become like a weekly starter at wide receiver or flex if he ends up taking that slot job.
Yeah, my article that I wrote last week that we just posted yesterday on the Little Bucks podcast, I talked about our number 2 wide receiver and the questions there. But Geronimo Allison, yep, they have him lining up in the slot right now, which is he's never really played on college. He's outside the numbers. Honestly, that doesn't matter. Like you said, they probably run I think they run for the last few years at least when Rodgers plays. They probably run the most wide receiver 3 wide receiver offenses in the league, sets in the league.
Yeah.
So. Falcons Marquez Valdez-Scantling will not be the second, Geronimo will end up being the second in targets at the wide receiver position, no matter where he's lining up, because he is going to be on the field more often than Scantling, because really all we know is that he runs deep routes right now. That's all I know of him. That's all we've seen. Geronimo, like you said, if he would have played all of last season, I don't know exactly what it is. I did put the numbers, I believe, into my article. He would have ended up like top 15, top 20 wide receiver based on the pace he was going on.
I want to say it was right around 1,000 yards, if not more, and damn near close to double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, he had like 300-something yards after, it was going to be like 960 yards or 990 yards probably in like double-digit touchdowns, yeah.
And that's your 8th-round pick. That's like a guy that could legit be like a wide receiver 3 or 4 on your team. That I'm not kidding you. Like I, at some point in the season, would probably feel comfortable putting him in my starting lineup on a weekly basis. The Packers are going to be consistent.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's wide receiver 2 numbers is what I was saying.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's go into your second sleeper pick.
This guy once played in the NFC last year. I'm going Mark Ingram, his ADP, who now plays for the Baltimore Ravens. I know that he's in the fucking AFC, right? So don't come at me. I'll drop my balls on your head.
Ben drinking.
ADP of 3.12, so end of third, beginning of fourth. That puts him at RB21.
Yeah.
I have him personally ranked as my RB12. I know it's not a huge difference, but that would be round 2. So I would draft him. I would reach for him for round 2 if middle of round 2. I know that puts him at like the beginning of round 2. I look, but I would definitely, if I had like 6th pick in the second round, I'd be looking to grab Mark Ingram. I think people are worried about the Gus Bus and Dixon. I'm not. They paid good money to bring in Mark Ingram, and he will be the featured back. He's a great runner and an underrated pass catcher, which I don't think either Gus or Kenneth Dixon do at all. They'll win games by playing defense and not turning the ball over. You know what that means?
Bunch of runs.
Yeah, they're going to run the ball because Lamar's going to throw interceptions. He will turn it over. So they're going to run the ball. They're not going to lose. They're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. Plus, have you seen their wide receivers? I just looked at their wide receivers today just to glance at them. It's fucking disgusting.
No one's seen their wide receivers outside of Hollywood Brown, who's never played a down. You're like, oh, this is underwhelming.
Yeah, and he's a rookie. Like, what I say about rookie wide receivers is he's going to be garbage this year anyways, and then he has Lamar Jackson trying to throw the ball to him.
Disaster.
No chance. Also, I know everybody's also scared about Lamar cutting into those carries. Number one, they're going to run it so much that even if he does take carries, look, Mark Ingram's going to get as many carries as he would anywhere else because they're going to run the ball as much as like the Saints. I mean the Seahawks did last year. They will run the ball more times than any team in the NFL this year. Mark Ingram's going to get his carries. He's going to score touchdowns. He's going to get yards, and that's the only way they're going to score. I don't see them throwing a touchdown all year.
That would be a hell of a stat, wouldn't it? But hey, if there was a guy to do it, it'd be Lamar Jackson.
Or no touchdowns to wide receivers. I would not be surprised.
Fair enough. I have so many things I want to say right now, and they're all kind of like just almost like questioning you because you started out by saying you listened to last week's podcast. Yeah. But if you did, you would have remembered that Mikey actually put Mark Ingram as a bust.
I did hear him say that.
Which is funny that you would select him in this, knowing that it was NFC. But anyways, I digress. You want to say that it was an AFC NFC mix. I'm gonna blame incompetence and alcohol.
Well, is it not genius of me to go against Mikey last week? Trash boy?
Well, yeah, because that's where my second point was going. If you listened like you said you did, you basically just regurgitated exactly what I said, and I'm just like, holy shit, I think I am DJ at this point. Because that was perfectly said, but it's because I said it last week.
Oh, I was golfing, so I only heard pieces of parts of it, but I do remember him having Mark Ingram on there.
Yeah, and drinking.
Now that you mention it.
And drinking. So I don't need to go back and listen to last week's if you want to hear my Mark Ingram take, but it was literally what DJ said. So perfect. I will go into my next sleeper. And I was really surprised to see this wide receiver's ADP. It's the 3rd pick in the 13th round, and it's the Saints wide receiver Tre'Quan Smith. I'm on record. I've wrote articles about it. I've talked about it on this podcast. I legit think the Saints are almost a lock to be a top 3 offense in the league this next year. You look at Kamara, he's going to get it done on the ground and through the air. Michael Thomas is going to be a top 5 wide receiver. He's a stud. Drew Brees is going to make another person fantasy relevant. And look at that team's wide receivers outside of them. Ted Ginn, he just celebrated a birthday. He just turned 1,000,000, so happy birthday to Ted Ginn. Outside of that, though, you've got Rashard Matthews, a new guy, Cameron Meredith, who's been hurt majority of the last 2 years. They know what they have there. That's not in the future plans. They don't provide the big play potential that Tre'Quan Smith does. And we saw Smith flash. Like when he was healthy, he had some games, if you picked him up on the waiver wire and plugged him in, he had a nice little run of games there last year towards the end of the season. I know he disappeared. I know there was some inconsistency to go along with those flashes. That's what you're going to get out of most rookie wide receivers. Most rookie wide receivers, it's different than running backs. You can see a rookie running back show a little bit of consistency. More often than not, you're not going to get that type of like consistency on a week-to-week basis from a wide receiver. But I think with a healthy offseason, another offseason with Breeze, just getting more familiar with the system, learning from Michael Thomas. Tre'Quan Smith is a guy in the 13th round. Man, you were getting him on the waivers last year, and you were probably plugging him in your lineup if you needed to. Like, this is a guy that's going to get drafted this year, and depending on matchups and injuries or anything else having at the wide receiver position, that could be a guy that in literally like the second to last or third to last round, depending on how deep your draft is, that you could feel comfortable using at some point. So all about Tre'Quan Smith.
Yeah, I want to add Tre'Quan Smith to my sleepers, too. I actually had him right next to Geronimo Allison in the rank in my wide receiver rankings.
Nice.
I had them at 34 and 35, respectively, but I'd probably move them up even a little bit more.
So you're definitely high on them.
Yeah, I'm fans of those guys, both of those guys. So
nice. You have so you did your quarterback, you did a running back, so I'm guessing you have a wide receiver now, and I'm just going to go on a limb. He probably plays in the AFC.
Last year he played in the NFC as well.
We've developed a habit here.
My boy, and I think you might have talked about this guy too last week, with Mikey, but I can't remember for sure.
We said his name.
What?
We said his name because
his name was definitely talked about.
Yeah.
Devin Funchess, ADP of 11.07, wide receiver number 49. I have him ranked at wide receiver 25, which would put him around round 6 being drafted based off of spots.
ADP.
Yeah, based off of that shit. I'm just looking at, look what Andrew Luck did for Ebron's numbers, and then realize that Funchess can come in there as the number 2 wide receiver who's going to be on the field twice as much as Eric Ebron. If you watch Colts games, you would be like, well, how is he scoring so many touchdowns? Because he's rarely on the field. He was almost never on the field, and Funchess now gets to come in there, be on the field, be a big, reliable, veteran wide receiver target who's going to be huge on third downs, and a great, I think, red zone threat.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew Luck's going to feast on that. That's what he does. He is an Aaron Rodgers type quarterback, Tom Brady, whatever, Drew Brees, who elevates guys, especially a veteran guy who knows what he's doing. He's going to use him. He's going to be open. And Andrew Luck, the cool thing about Andrew Luck is like guys like Brees and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, they like to be comfortable with their wide receivers, right? You see Drew Brees and Michael Thomas. And same with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams this year. It was just like those two. It seemed like just playing by themselves.
Yeah.
Andrew Luck will throw it all over to anybody. Like, if he sees you and you're open, he's going to throw you the ball.
Right.
Funchess will get open. He'll get desperate sometimes and give him shots. I'm projecting for Funchess, and I think he had a similar season to this about 2 years ago, 800 to 900 yards, 8 to 10 TDs this year. He's being extremely underdrafted, in my opinion. Actually, that would probably put him like top 15. That's a huge projection, but I think he has a big year.
With that many touchdowns, for sure. Yeah, I know that we mentioned him last week because as one of my sleepers, I had Jack Doyle, and one of Mikey's sleepers
Paris Campbell?
No, not Paris Campbell, was Nyheim Hines. So then
Nyheim
we just kind of
Hines,
talked about Funchess as well. And I actually considered Funchess in that. And why I like him, a lot of the reasons that you said that, but I was never super high on Devin Funchess as like a complete wide receiver. Well, guess what? He can go to Indy, not be relied on to be like the go-to guy every single play. Let T.Y. stretch the field. Let Doyle and Ebron work the middle. And Funchess, like you said, can get it done, can move the sticks. I can't believe I just said move the sticks. I hate that.
Oh, shit.
And he can be the red zone guy. Like, you might see a decrease from like Doyle and Ebron's touchdowns, but they're going to go to your guy. So one thing is between you, Mikey, and I, one of us is going to be freaking spot on with this sleeper, and then at least one of us is probably going to falter. So just follow our advice on these sleepers. Draft all three. You're going to hit on one of them.
Perfect.
So my last sleeper is, and I've talked about this guy a couple of times as well, and it's the quarterback that I am actually targeting. The last pick in the 11th round, Dak Prescott, obviously of the Cowboys. And DJ, I wrote an article, as you are well aware, on loadedboxpodcast.com. Remember how I talked about this article about 900 times last time we podcasted?
Yep, I remember it.
I'm keeping it up. I'm going to do it again. In my NFC East version of this article, I wrote, Dak, I'm going to just kind of synopsis this. I want you to actually go to the website, click the damn link, and read it yourself. In the 3 seasons, though, as a full starter, finished as a QB1. That includes QB10, QB9, and QB6. Stop disrespecting this guy. Let me see here. Going basically in the 12th, 11th round, this one is easy. Dude, he's got Zeke, who's obviously going to just crush it on the ground. We understand that. But at the same time, so do opposing teams' defensive coordinators. They are going to do whatever they can to get in that man's way. And hey, here comes Dak. And here comes Dak with Amari Cooper, who he showed like instant chemistry with. And their numbers both just jumped off the page when they were actually playing together and on the same page. So look at this. 3 years, finishing as a QB1. You're getting him in the 11th, 12th round. I like your idea of going with Rivers. You can wait another 3 rounds, dude, and get Dak, who is literally going to finish as a QB1. I'll put whatever kind of bet we want on that. I'm all about trying to get Dak 11th or 12th round for your starter. Dude, that's insane. I love it.
I don't want any piece of Dak.
You don't like quarterback 10. You don't like quarterback 9. You don't like quarterback 6.
Don't trust him. Can't live with him. Can't coach him. Dude, I can't wait for another wide receiver to leave the Green Bay Packers and be trash because they don't have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback.
I don't even care about Randall Cobb.
Well, he'd probably be good if Dak Prescott was actually good, but he won't be.
So what are you basing that just on your eye test? Because 3 straight years finishing as a quarterback 1, DJ.
Yeah, I don't like his downfield play, and I just think eventually it's going to catch up with him. People are going to start jumping him. I don't know. I don't think he reads downfield very well. And I just don't like how he plays quarterback. I think you judge Dak, though, based on the conversations we've had. I think you judge Dak as would I want my franchise to have that guy? And you as a Packers fan, you have Aaron Rodgers, you've had Brett Favre, you know what a good quarterback looks like. And you're like, you know what? I could take or leave Dak as a franchise quarterback. But man, fantasy's a different ball game when it comes to these quarterbacks. And that ability that he provides running the football as well, you can't deny that in fantasy. It made Josh Allen, the guy that we just both despise, it made him fantasy relevant. It's making Dak Prescott fantasy relevant, and he's improving as a quarterback. He truly is. Another year with Amari Cooper. Dude, sign him up, quarterback 1. Not overall, but top 12 quarterback. I think his first season was his best year. He's just getting worse and worse now in my eyes.
All right, DJ, we're going to do agree to disagree. While I read this pristine auction read, you come up with a bet for quarterback, top 12 quarterback, because it sounds like you're totally against that.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Come up with an idea while I talk about this, because we are doing another giveaway prior to the 2019 NFL season. But in the meantime, we can get you a $5 credit put towards any item that you win at pristineauction.com. Just enter the registration code LOADED in the registration code field when you create an account. Pristine Auction, they have daily auctions, they've got week-long auctions, tons of stuff for all sports for the man cave. Football season is right around the corner. You're going to be watching those games. You're going to want some stuff surrounding you in that man cave. Show your fandom, have your friends over, go to pristineauction.com, registration code LOADED, LOADED, pristineauction.com. DJ, are we going to go straight into our bust, or did you come up with a bet?
Yeah, I didn't even think about a bet at all, honestly.
All right, well then right before we go into the bust, so that I don't forget, I took off a week with Mikey because I didn't know if he'd be able to relate as well. But I got a little pregnant wife advice. I think this is our 3rd installment. So you probably know about this one, but in case maybe you're expecting, maybe it's on your horizon here, men that are listening to this podcast, when you go with to a doctor's appointment that she is having, drive with her. If you don't drive with her, if you drive separate and you show up at different times, maybe traffic got in the way, maybe you left a little bit later, you might end up in the wrong hospital room. You might end up on the wrong hospital floor. You might end up at the wrong hospital. Go with, avoid getting lost. That's my advice for the day. Just stick with her because you don't want to be that guy that they're searching for in the hallway.
Speak of incompetence. How dumb can you be?
Moving on. Let's start off with your first NFC bust.
Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, ADP 5.06, quarterback number 4. Disgusting. This is just gross, in my opinion. The offensive line in Houston was their biggest issue, and they didn't improve at all. And I don't want to go anywhere near that. This is a guy who makes bad decisions, especially when he's being pressured like that. I know he can turn into some awesome plays like Russell, but he also turns a lot of them into dumb fumbles or interceptions. And in my opinion, there's just too many running backs and wide receivers that you can grab in round 5.06.
Right.
Well, yeah, who are going to finish ahead of, like, way higher than a quarterback to me than a quarterback that won't finish inside the top 10.
Let me interject with one quick question. Is your calling him a bust then based more on his ADP and your theory that you should wait for a quarterback because you're going to get a good guy later where all these quality guys on the board? Or do you actually think that there's a quarterback even worth drafting at that point? Like, are you taking a Mahomes? Are you taking a Rodgers? Or are you just a little bit more biased on the pick of it being an actual quarterback? And maybe your hate's not directed at Deshaun Watson. It's the idea of taking Deshaun Watson that early.
To taking Deshaun Watson that early, there may be like one or two, three quarterbacks that I can see going round 5 just because people are going to take them.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers, 4 quarterbacks maybe. Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees. I think all are worth it there.
And Brees is going like round 7, 8.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense. Deshaun Watson doesn't make any sense. Number one, he's going to die. He's too skinny to just run around. He's going to die.
And you don't have room on your fantasy roster for a guy that's dead.
You just don't have room for it. Somebody will break him. But I don't want a guy who's playing basically with the Arizona Cardinals offensive line a little bit better, but just as bad. On my team running around looking like a chicken with his head cut off. Like, he has more of a chance to get hurt. You're taking a calculated risk drafting Deshaun Watson, where I don't think the ceiling. People are going to put his ceiling way up there. I don't think it is because of that offensive line. I think him as a quarterback with a decent offensive line, the ceiling's huge. But with the offensive line that he has, his ceiling comes way down. As a quarterback, his ceiling is high. As a quarterback behind the offensive line he's playing with the scariness he has to deal with, the ceiling is not as what it should be for him as a quarterback behind a middle of the road offensive line, in my opinion.
I think one of the reasons the ADP is so high for him as well is because people saw his rookie year, like what he was doing stat-wise and how that would have projected over a full 16-game season. Like, had he not been hurt, would have stayed like par for the course on like what he was doing. And then you saw last year, and I'll give you credit for this. You knocked it out of the park, said, hey, he's going in the 3rd round. Do not touch him. I remember how bad he started. Like, he was like a fantasy nightmare, taking him in the 3rd round and just getting average week after average week, or even below average week. But then you could see it a little bit last year, like when that offense started protecting him, when things were clicking, him and Hopkins were hooking up, they'd get the run game going a little bit. There were like things in there that made him look like a 4th, 5th round pick. So I get that. What I hate about that ADP, and we talk about it all the time, me and you are like the biggest supporters of consistency at certain positions, and you definitely need that at quarterback. And if you're taking a quarterback that high, you need someone that, Watson's going to have boom weeks. He's going to knock it out of the park for you every once in a while. But all the weeks, you need him to perform at like a 20-point level like every single week, and I don't think he provides that. So I'm kind of a mix with you. I don't hate the selection quite as much to call it a bust because I think that potential is there. But at the end of the day, man, you're just not going to get the full, like, however many weeks of fantasy football season is, 14, 15 weeks, whatever it ends up being. You're not going to get that every single week, and you're leaving so many good running backs and wide receivers still on the board by taking your quarterback that high.
So he finished his QB4, which is obviously good, but he had 551 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns on the ground. That's going to just keep coming down. Guys in the NFL just aren't going to let that happen. They just aren't. Defenses will not continue to let that happen for a guy like that, and he's going to have to throw the ball a little bit more, and I think that's where he's going to get hurt. If you think you can rely on 555 yards and 5 touchdowns from him another year, I think you're fucking crazy.
It's risky. That's like that whole boom bust thing with running quarterbacks, man. It comes down to that. Like, is it going to continue, or is it going to be an RG3, busted knee, and boom, next thing you know, he can't hobble anywhere?
Exactly.
My first bust pains me a little bit. It's Chris Godwin of the Bucks. And what kills me here is just that ADP is too high. 3rd pick in the 5th round. I still like Godwin in Dynasty. I'm still trying to trade for him in a couple of Dynasty leagues. In redraft, though, 5th round, just not quite feeling it, though. I think a lot of that comes from I am not on the same train as these people that think, like, Bruce Arians is just going to fix Jameis Winston. I mean, there's so many people that are buying into that. And I like Mike Evans. He's going to get his. But Winston isn't just going to, like, flip the switch and just become this great quarterback that can make multiple people fantasy relevant. You're already taking Mike Evans really high. OJ Howard is one of, like, the top, like, 5, 6 tight ends being drafted right now. Is there enough room there? Has he really ever been able to successfully really bring 3 people to fantasy relevancy, like, as pass catchers? And now you're taking him in the 5th round. I just don't see it. And here's another reason. You can get all these guys after Chris Godwin. Tyler Lockett, Jarvis Landry, Mike Williams, Calvin Ridley. I like all of those guys with, like, just as great of ceilings and safer floors. So yeah, you're going to get some boom weeks out of Godwin. Just once again, as a 5th round pick at wide receiver, not going to be the consistency there. So I got him in my first bust.
I see your side of the argument, and I also see other sides of the argument. I don't think it's fixing Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is who he is.
Oh, yeah.
It's the fact that he's going to throw the ball. Arians had to end up at an offense like this with guys like Godwin and Mike Evans and OJ Howard, because these are guys that can stretch the damn field, and that he wants to stretch the field. That ball is going to be... If they time the airtime on a ball that gets thrown throughout the year compared to other offenses, I'm guessing the ball is going to be in the air for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for more seconds than any other team in the league. Like, average distance traveled, average time in the air.
If that's not a calculated stat, please, someone out there that has a very unique stopwatch, please watch every single game and make that a stat, because I'm going to base my fantasy rankings based on air travel times of passing plays in the air. I can't even say that.
He just freaking, like, he's a good quarterback. He's an average quarterback. He's a good quarterback who makes bad decisions, but he's going to throw the ball downfield, and Arians is going to let him, and that warrants bumping these guys up in fantasy territory, in my opinion. That's what he does. It has nothing to do with making him better. I think it has more with just he's going to throw the fucking ball downfield. They have a bad defense. They're not better. And it's just going to be airing the ball out constantly, and that's what games are going to be for them. And it's going to be they might be one of my favorite teams to watch this year, because I did love the Arians and the Cardinals style, just throwing the ball downfield all the fucking time with Carson Palmer. It was awesome.
That is one of the boldest statements from a guy who loves, like, good complete teams. Like, you've watched Packers teams led by Aaron Rodgers and stuff. You're excited to watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year.
It's not my favorite team, so what do I care if they suck or not? They're going to throw the ball downfield. There's going to be like 94 interceptions and 100 touchdowns, and it's going to be amazing.
Could be entertaining. Well, they don't have Fitzmagic anymore, though, so that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, but they have Jameis fucking Winston. Like, it's more entertaining than Jameis Winston.
That might be the most outlandish thing ever said on this podcast. Yeah, but they've got Jameis fucking Winston.
I mean, who's the most, like, crazy quarterback eating W's and fucking stealing crabs and grabbing girls by the pussy? Like, he is Donald Trump of football.
Bingo. I can't top that. Go to your next bust.
Yeah, my next bust. Oh shit. All right, my next bust out of the NFC, James Conner. He is going as a running back number 9, which right now ADP of 1.12. You're getting him at the end of the first, beginning of the second. Honestly, this is gut feeling for me. I've got no numbers, right? I don't give a fuck about your numbers, you asshole.
You've held strong with this. I'm impressed.
I think there are other running backs on this team who are going to get plenty of touches, plenty of run. Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels. I love Jalen Samuels. He helped save us. He helped me finish the season strong last year by picking his ass up.
And playing him as a tight end.
You played him at tight end. I did. I picked him up and played him at tight end, and he dominated at tight end. Best tight end I've ever had.
That's right.
The only tight end I've ever liked in my entire life was Jalen Samuels, the running back, who got to play tight end on my freaking fantasy football team.
We found a loophole for you that made you like a tight end.
I'm going to be looking for running back tight ends all year long this year, I tell you what. But
I love it.
I do understand. Don't get me wrong. I understand that this offensive line can support any running back. I think they're going to make a running back look good no matter who it is. I just don't think his touches will warrant him being a first-round pick. I personally don't. I'm going to go ahead and steer clear of James Conner if I have that pick in that round. I'm going Devontae Adams or Michael Thomas or something like that at that position of one of those top wide receivers that drops there. I'm just staying away from James Conner.
Yeah, I was just quickly doing the math in my head about how far in, how many holes deep, in your golf round you would have been by the time Mikey and I got to our bust. And you were probably on hole 8, hole 9 at this point. So you might have had a couple of beers and you might have forgot that James Conner was actually one of my busts.
Oh yeah, I definitely did. Again, I was golfing while I was listening to you a couple times. I was actually swinging the driver and you guys were talking, so.
I love it. You probably played the round of your life because you weren't thinking about golf.
Crushing it.
So
I golfed 94.
If you want to hear my complete thoughts on James Conner, go back to the last episode because I thought I crushed it. And you did too because you're on my side with this. But, dude, there's 11 players gone. You're taking the 12th player. You mean to tell me you can't find a better guy than James Conner? James Conner kind of got it done for part of 1 year. Mm-hmm. That sort of seems like a system position. You can kind of just plug in anybody. Not saying he might not have a good season, but man, there's just so much risk to that with little reward. You're going to have other guys on that team, like you said, that can take carries. You're going to have not millions, but hundreds of other guys on other teams to pick from. Not that you would pick from hundreds, but there's 10s or 20s that you can take from over James Conner at that position, and you're going to feel so much better about it just because we truly don't quite know exactly what this Steelers offense is going to look like, and we don't know exactly what James Conner is because that sample size is just so small. I don't need to add any more. That's what I got. Do you want to say anything more about that, or should I move on to my next bust? Next. Okay, my next bust, and it's Christian Kirk of the Cardinals, a receiver that I loved coming out of college, by the way. But, dude, he's going as the 7th pick in the 7th round, and the 7th round isn't crazy early for this type of player. Excuse me, I think I got some beer lodged in my throat there. But ask yourself this. Do you really want a Cardinals wide receiver on your roster or potentially in your starting lineup? Because I, for one, am not a huge fan of that this year. I like Kirk when he got drafted by the Cardinals. I like the idea of pairing him. You had Larry Fitzgerald. You drafted a young quarterback in Josh Rosen. Well, guess what? Now you have a brand new coach. You have a brand new quarterback. It's a rookie quarterback. You're starting all over. So, yeah, Christian Kirk might be fine a couple years down the road, but he's not going to warrant your 7th rounder in this year's draft. He's got some boom potential. The thing about Kirk is he has a little bit of boom potential where he might be I'm not comparing him to Tyreek Hill in terms of actual skill set as a receiver, but he'll have those weeks where he might put up $170 and 2 touchdowns. But then he's going to come back and get you 30 yards, 40 yards, 42 yards, and he's just not going to be there on a consistent basis. So I think a lot of this, I've said it a lot, it comes down to consistency. But man, if I'm wrong on this one, so be it. I'm wrong. I'm going to let him be someone else's issue, and I'm going to give you a bonus bust. I'm not going to talk too much about him. But when I was looking at Christian Kirk, guess who else is going in the 7th round?
I saw this.
Kyler frickin' Murray. Kyler Murray can't be your starting fantasy quarterback this year, and you can't take him in the 7th round?
Nope. I mean, I don't, like, I have this propensity to just hate guys.
You
just
do.
hate him. I hate fucking Kyler Murray. And I don't even know why. I think it's just because he's so overblown. He can be a perfectly fine person. I don't like his little bitch attitude, the face he's always making, the way he interviewed, and just how fucking people are just blowing this guy up like he's like a winner. I hear this winner shit. I don't like him. I mean, he's playing for the Arizona Cardinals, who have the worst offensive line in like the history of football. I'm not touching a single Arizona Cardinal on my team this year, and I would be willing to bet that anybody who does have an Arizona Cardinal on their team doesn't make their playoffs if they have a restriction of 16 playoffs.
So you're on board with Christian Kirk being a bust as a 7th rounder?
100%. I'm not touching an Arizona Cardinal.
Love it. Let's go
Not
on.
even David Johnson.
Oh, yeah. I fell for that one last year. I can't go down that road again. Let's hear your third and final bust for the NFC.
Oh no, I got an NFC guy here. I've got
You broke the streak.
I didn't write any notes down. I've got Kenny Galladay here. I had some thoughts in my head, and I probably lost them all.
Well, it's because it's an NFC player. You weren't prepared for this.
Yeah, ADP of 4.11. Wide receiver number 18. I just don't have faith. I think Kenny Galladay is a great skilled wide receiver. So this is nothing. I actually like the guy. I just don't have any more faith in Matthew Stafford. I went out there a few weeks ago on our podcast and I said, I think this might be Matt Stafford's, I think this is where he falls apart and the Detroit Lions are drafting a quarterback next year. I honestly believe that. I think he has a terrible year this year because he dropped off the radar after last year. I didn't know what happened. I think he's on his way out. I am done with Matt Stafford. So I have no confidence in anybody besides Kerryon Johnson that's going to be catching passes in that Detroit Lions offense. I'm sorry, Kenny Galladay, but to me, he's I wouldn't take him to 7th or 8th round. I don't want him. Don't want him.
I think the ADP is a little bit high. I'm also a big Galladay guy, so I'm a little bit biased on this one. But let's say that Stafford returns to some sort of relevancy, like that quarterback, 12 to 15 range. He has, that's kind of where he's lived. He's been a little bit higher in the past. But he's always made a wide receiver fantasy relevant. Obviously, Calvin Johnson was a top 3 to 5 guy basically his entire career. But you've had Marvin Jones do well in fantasy. You've had Golden Tate do well in fantasy. Kenny Galladay has put out spurts here and there. Remember, he started the year really well last year. I'm not ready to give up on Galladay yet. I don't know that I want to flat out call him a bust fantasy player this year. But I get your point. Taking him at that early, he needs to have a legit finish. He needs to finish as what at that range did you say what wide receiver he was? Probably a low end wide receiver 2.
Wide receiver 18.
So middle wide receiver 2. Yeah. So you're projecting quite a bit out of him. The skill set's there. You said it. I think the offense will be a little bit better this year. I think, like you said, I love Kerryon Johnson. I like what they're doing. Part of me still just can't quite separate from Matt Stafford. I think there's a little bit left. I think there's some left in the tank yet. I think they just need to come up with some sort of better offensive scheme, and they have a new offensive coordinator now. I can see taking Galladay at this spot. I'm not a huge fan of it, but man, being in as many redraft leagues as I am in, I'm going to end up owning Kenny Galladay. So I guess that's probably my biggest disagreement so far.
Don't want him. Can't live with him.
Next. Oh, dude. So you went from one that I disagreed with to one that I already can tell by the look on your face. You are going to hate this. Hear me out, though, all right? Aaron Jones, running back, Green Bay Packers, ADP of 3.02. Let me promote one more article here because within the last 3 hours, I dropped on loadedboxpodcast.com the fantasy football players to target and avoid from the NFC North. And as you all know by now, it's one player each team that you're drafting, one player that you're avoiding. Surprise, surprise. I'm going to spoil a little bit this for you. My sleeper was Geronimo Allison. Boom. He's my target. My avoid, Aaron Jones. He's my bust. So let me recap a little bit of what I said in my article here because, DJ, believe it or not, I'm an Aaron Jones guy. I believe that he's the running back that's going to get the most snaps. He's going to get the most touches. He's going to be fantasy football relevant. Don't get me wrong there. A couple reasons why I'm hesitant on him. First, I'm very high on several running backs that have similar or even later ADPs. You've got Devontae Freeman, you've got Leonard Fournette, Kerryon Johnson, your guy, Mark Ingram, and Phillip Lindsay. All guys that I feel a little bit safer in.
I almost put Phillip Lindsay on my bus list. I hate Lindsay.
Oh, you can't do that. We talked about that with a different guest. I forgot what we were talking about, but I love Phillip Lindsay. You can't talk me out of him. Here's my second point. Aaron Rodgers, your guy, the guy if you're watching on YouTube that is just littered on your back wall. Go to pristineauction.com, enter registration code loaded. Aaron Rodgers is a true pass first led offense quarterback. That's what they're going to do. End of the day, they can say they're going to run the ball more. Games on the line. You know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. He's going to pass it. When is the last time that Aaron Rodgers, as this Hall of Fame worthy quarterback, had a running back that was really fantasy relevant, that you're going to trust on a week-to-week basis, that you're selecting in the third round? Remember when people were going crazy about Eddie Lacy? Dude had
awesome for 2 years.
Dude had 2 okay years, and then he just fell off. I think Aaron Jones is
2 okay years, 2 great years.
He had 2 okay years, and then he just fell off. I think Aaron Jones is a better running back than Eddie Lacy. Yeah, which is fine. I told you I'm a fan of Aaron Jones. What I'm not a fan of is taking him in the third round, where that's legit your running back 1 if you go receiver, potentially an RB2. There's other guys. The guys that I mentioned, I'm so much more comfortable with. If you can get Jones in the 4th or 5th, pull the trigger. He'll be fine. As the third rounder, I have to label him a bust. Let me have it.
Eddie Lacy was a 1,200-yard, 10-touchdown running back with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Jones is way better than Eddie Lacy was.
If you'd have told me Eddie Lacy was going to get name dropped this much on this podcast, I'd have said, dude, I'm out.
He's way better. And this is a team that not only he's going to run the ball, he's going to have the most carries. It's not even close. Jamal Williams will hardly be used. He's going to give him some spells. But they are committed to using him in the passing game this year. He didn't catch the ball at all. They just didn't throw the ball to him. They thought Jamal Williams was a better pass catcher, which I told people more over and over and over again. That's just not true if you go and look back at the college numbers. Aaron Jones is a better wide receiver than Jamal Williams. You'll see it this year. It's going to happen, and you can see what he did in the screen game. He's going to get more opportunities like that. This guy is going to finish as a top 5 running back this year in fantasy football. Lock it in. He's going to have 1,400 yards rushing. I'm feeling it.
You have him ranked as your RB9 in our Loaded Box podcast fantasy ranks. I'm curious. All right. Wow. I guess you proved me wrong there too, because you've got Leonard Fournette 13. You've got Devontae Freeman 16. You've got Mark Ingram 12. So you're actually saying, I was going to say, would you take Aaron Jones over those guys I mentioned? And clearly you would. So I don't even have that point anymore.
And it's going to sound homer.
Oh, it does.
And it does. But I said the same thing about Devontae Adams. I had him wide receiver number 1 last year.
Yeah.
When fantasy football was actually important at week 15, he finished as wide receiver number 1. Okay, not at week 17. He was wide receiver 2. But when fantasy football is still existing, before the season ended, he finished as wide receiver 1. Before your playoffs ended, I am right again. Aaron Jones is going to fucking dominate. He is. It's what's gonna happen. LaFleur is trying to put some water on the fire and being he needs to bulk up, and he does look fucking jacked. They show him Christian McCaffrey, dude. Aaron Jones looks jacked too, but they're gonna throw him the ball. They're gonna hand him the ball constantly, and this guy's vision. I said this since the day I started watching his tape, and people were like, Jamal Williams was drafted ahead of him. He's the guy, and I came on the podcast and I'm like, I like Aaron Jones. Since that second, you can just see his vision is better, his agility is better. His explosion is better. Everything's better. This is the best running back right now, I'm telling you, that Aaron Rodgers has had in his time here. They have an offensive line. They're going to commit to running the ball. So, because that's when Aaron Rodgers gets to use that play action with a Jordy Nelson like he did. And now Marcus Valdes-Scantling does become more relevant. Now he gets to tee off on those corner post routes and go score touchdowns because they're running the ball successfully. Aaron Jones is going to fucking dominate this year.
Like I said, I like him as a running back, man. I'm just not there in the third round. Give me him in the fourth. I'll take him in the fifth.
I'll take him in the second. I'm not even kidding. I will take him in the second round. I'm not even scared because he's a first round running back. He is. He's a first round running back.
Woo! Here it is. That's a bold statement. I like it. I like that you. I mean, you brought it. I called you crazy last year when you said Devontae Adams was like your number one wide receiver. I'm like, dude, come on, take these serious. There's Odell Beckham. There's Julio Jones. There's DeAndre Hopkins. I'm like, you can't put Adams one. And you're like, dude, nope, no hesitation. He's healthy. He's got a thing with Rodgers. He's going to be the number one guy. And yeah, depending on your league, he was like number 1, 2, or 3.
I love running backs, okay? This is what I do. So I'm not just like trying to be biased. When I see somebody on the Packers that I think is not going to play well, Ty Montgomery was one of those guys. I thought he was going to be terrible. I said Jamal Williams is going to be bad. I hated Jamal Williams. I loved Aaron Jones from the second I watched his tape in comparison. I do not care that he plays for the Packers. If he played for somebody else, besides like the Vikings or Bears, I'd probably be saying the same thing if I got to watch him play like that. It's just this is what I do. I see what running backs do. I see when they're guys that are talented. He's a great fucking running back. I don't care who he plays for. The guy's balance and vision is second to none. It's just ridiculous. His low center of gravity is great. I sent you a text the other day that said how many rushing yards did Aaron Jones have against the Dolphins?
And you know what? I thought, like, in my head I answered, but I never did. And guess what my response was going to be?
I actually don't know. I'm still wondering.
Oh, my response in my head, which I thought I sent you, but I didn't, I realized later, was how old is Frank Gore?
Like 142?
Yes, that's my answer.
So, look this up while I'm talking about this. The reason I sent this to you is because I was watching, like, somebody made a tape of all of Aaron Jones' 10 plus yard runs, which I was like, okay, I'm a Packer fan. I'm going to sit here and watch it because that's what I do. I'm a football fan. I'm a loser. And it was cool to watch, but
they were all against the Dolphins.
There was a bunch of them, but there was like 8 of those against the Dolphins, and 2 of them went for 30 plus. Like, it was incredible. And I'm like, dude, he had to have 130 at least against the Dolphins just from the 10 plus yard runs he had.
Oh yeah, it was his breakout game. I happened to be at that game. It was a waste of my time. He had 145 yards. And it wasn't like a ton of carries. It was 15 carries. He averaged 9.7 a pop.
Yeah, and I think every one of them was 10 yards. Like, Jesus Christ. It was
2 touchdowns, and he added 3 catches for 27 yards. So that's that's 17 plus 12. That's like a damn near, that's like a 30-point fantasy game.
I just noticed more Dolphins jerseys in that highlight video than anything. I was like, holy shit. Did he have a good game against the Dolphins or what?
So if you played the Dolphins every week, I'd be cool with that ADP, but since they won't play him for another 4 years, I'm going to stick with 4th, 5th round for Aaron Jones.
All right, well, you'll be making the mistake.
Do you have anything else you would like to add, especially since you took last week off and clearly like semi-listened to the podcast and mixed up everything?
Well, you know what? One NFC guy is not too bad. It was better than 0 NFC guys.
I would have loved it if you'd have done all AFC. That would have been the best.
I just randomly went through and picked 5 out of the 6 guys were AFC.
One of my favorite moments of 2019 was looking through your agenda and only seeing AFC guys on the NFC episode. I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah. Well, I had to replace Trash Mikey, so I had to bring the heat and give you one NFC guys at the end.
No doubt. Hey,
next week I'll talk about NFC guys.
When we're not even talking boom sleepers or bust.
I'll do a whole different podcast from you.
So we should start doing two episodes in one. Well, as always, check us out on Twitter. We can be found at LoadedBox. Check out the website that we've been talking about this entire podcast, loadedboxpodcast.com. It's got our blogs. It's got our fantasy rankings. It's got our podcast episodes. Everything that you need in life is found there. We'll be back again next week with probably 2 different episodes that myself and DJ are doing simultaneously. We're available wherever you find podcasts. Obviously, because you are listening to this and hearing this now, you know exactly where we are. But in case you are some crazy person on a different planet and want to know where else we're found, we're on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, radio.com. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. DJ, send us away.
Bye.